Success isn't a lightning strike, it's a process. It doesn't arrive just because you wish for it, and it certainly doesn't show up simply because you've been waiting long enough. The truth is, the waiting period between where you are and where you want to be is where most people lose themselves. They either grow impatient and quit, or they stay still, convincing themselves that waiting alone is some kind of virtue. But waiting without action is just stagnation disguised as patience. The real winners, the ones who rise, who evolve, who break limits, they know how to wait while working. They understand that patience isn't passive, it's active discipline in motion. You see, there's a rhythm to success. It doesn't always reward speed, it rewards alignment, the ability to stay consistent, focused, and prepared while the results catch up to your effort. That's what separates those who only dream from those who achieve. The average person gives up when results don't appear fast enough. They confuse timing with talent, thinking that because they haven't made it yet, they aren't meant for it. But success has its own timeline, and your job is not to predict it. Your job is to earn it daily, even when you can't see it coming. Think about it. Every great trader, athlete, or creator knows that there's a waiting period between planting and harvest. You can't control the weather, the market, or the timing, but you can control how you prepare, how you study, how you show up. The quiet hours when no one's watching are where your future is being built. That's when your discipline is tested, your belief is refined, and your character is shaped. Waiting is not the absence of movement. It's the test of endurance that determines whether you're truly ready for what you say you want. Most people want success on their terms, quick, predictable, painless. But that's not how growth works. Growth demands that you keep showing up, especially when you don't feel like it. It demands that you trade instant gratification for lasting impact. It demands that you understand the market of life, you invest effort now, and the return comes later, sometimes much later. The impatient never get to see that return because they pull out before the payoff. Waiting while working means you trust the process even when you can't measure the progress. It means believing in the unseen, not blindly, but because your actions keep you aligned with the vision. Every small improvement, every disciplined choice, every quiet repetition, they're all deposits toward a breakthrough you haven't yet seen. And when it finally comes, it won't feel like luck. It'll feel like the natural result of patience that never stood still. Patience without action is stagnation. That single truth separates the dreamers from the doers, the hopeful from the disciplined. Too many people mistake patience for passivity, as if sitting still, waiting for something to change will somehow summon success. But the universe doesn't reward stillness, it rewards movement, it rewards consistent, deliberate effort, even when the results aren't visible. Patience in its purest form isn't about waiting for opportunities to appear, it's about preparing yourself so thoroughly that when opportunity arrives, you're ready to seize it without hesitation. Most people misunderstand patience. They think it means stepping back, letting things unfold naturally, and avoiding action until everything feels right. But that's a trap, the waiting room where ambitions go to die. True patience is not doing nothing, it's doing the right things repeatedly, even when they don't seem to be working yet. It's holding the line, refining your process, studying your craft, and staying disciplined while others lose focus. It's knowing that results take time, but that time only serves you if you fill it with meaningful action. Every goal worth pursuing exists in a delayed reward system. You put in the work now, but the payoff often arrives later, sometimes much later. During that gap, impatience becomes the downfall of many. They get frustrated, they start questioning themselves, and they look for shortcuts. But shortcuts, by their nature, skip the very lessons that make success sustainable. The patient worker doesn't wait idly. They understand that every small, consistent step is shaping them into the person who can handle the success thereafter. When you act without patience, you burn out. When you wait without action, you rust out. The balance lies in disciplined patience, showing up every day, executing your process, trusting that each repetition compounds. Think of a seed buried underground. It looks inactive, lifeless, but beneath the soil, roots are growing, connections are forming, strength is building. If you dug it up every day to check progress, you'd kill the process. But if you left it untouched without watering it, it would also die. The same principle applies to your goals. You can't just wait and see, and you can't just force it to happen. You nurture your vision daily, patiently, through consistent action. In trading, business, or life, this principle repeats endlessly. The market, the world, or your circumstances will not bend to your impatience. If you try to chase quick wins, you'll often sabotage your long-term growth. Patience is not about doing less, it's about doing more of what matters and less of what doesn't. It's about knowing when to act and when to observe, when to execute and when to prepare. You must be moving forward internally even when things look motionless externally. There's a psychological battle embedded in this. Your mind craves progress, it wants visible confirmation that your effort is paying off. But the truth is, growth is rarely visible in the beginning. The early stages of mastery look like failure to most people. The only way through that phase is to replace the emotional need for results with the rational discipline of process. You must remind yourself that what you're building is not just a result, it's resilience. You're conditioning your mind to stay grounded under pressure, to believe in work before outcome. Patience without action, on the other hand, is a subtle form of fear. It's the comfort zone disguised as wisdom. People tell themselves they're waiting for the right moment, but what they're really doing is avoiding risk. They hide behind preparation, research, or overthinking, convincing themselves that their caution is intelligence. But time passes, opportunities fade, and progress halts. The waiting turns into rust. The difference between growth and decay lies in movement, no matter how small. When you commit to patient action, you start to understand time differently. You stop treating it like a barrier and start using it as leverage. Each day becomes a brick in the foundation, not a countdown to results. You no longer measure progress by what you've achieved, but by how consistently you're showing up. This mental shift creates peace, not the kind that comes from stillness, but the kind that comes from alignment. You're no longer chasing outcomes, you're becoming the person capable of producing them. Patience without action is like holding an unplayed instrument. The potential is there, but the music remains silent. silent. Action is the melody that brings patience to life. You can spend years reading about trading strategies, studying business models, or planning creative projects, but until you execute, nothing happens. Waiting for confidence, waiting for certainty, waiting for the right time, those are illusions. Confidence is built through doing. Certainty is built through repetition. Timing becomes right only when you're prepared to meet it with action. This doesn't mean rushing or forcing outcomes. Impulsive action without patience is equally dangerous. You can't trade discipline for chaos. The point is to stay in motion with awareness, to execute without expectation, to build without rushing the results. The patient worker understands that time amplifies effort. The impatient one tries to compress time and ends up breaking under pressure. There's a quiet strength that comes with working patiently. It's the confidence of knowing that every step, no matter how small, matters. It's the understanding that delay doesn't mean denial. When you move with purpose, even during slow seasons, you keep momentum alive. That's what most people lack, the ability to stay engaged when results aren't instant. They confuse slowness with failure, but in reality, the slower seasons are often the most productive ones, because they're where foundations are laid. When you choose patient action, you begin to value process over praise. You stop needing validation for every move. You stop comparing your timeline to others. You realize that success is not about who gets there first, but who stays the longest. The marketplace, the audience, the opportunity, they all respond to endurance. The world eventually rewards those who stay consistent, because consistency builds trust, and trust builds results. Patience without action turns ambition into wishful thinking. It's easy to wait for the perfect setup, to convince yourself that more time will make it easier. But life doesn't become easier, you become stronger. That strength only grows through active experience, through testing, adjusting, failing, and trying again. The ones who keep moving, no matter how small the steps, are the ones who eventually outlast the rest. Every time you act patiently, not by waiting, but by working through uncertainty, you're sending a message to your future self. I'm ready. You're aligning with success on its natural schedule, not trying to rush it or force it. Because in the end, progress is always happening. It just takes time for the outside world to reflect what's been building inside all along. Success rewards alignment, not speed. In a world obsessed with quick results, instant recognition, and overnight transformation, this truth cuts deep. Most people chase success as if it's a race, believing that whoever moves the fastest wins. But speed without direction is its movement without meaning. You can run endlessly, work tirelessly, and still find yourself going nowhere if your energy isn't aligned with purpose, principle, and preparation. Success doesn't respond to how quickly you move. It responds to how clearly you're aligned with what truly matters. Alignment is the quiet force behind every sustainable achievement. It's what connects your thoughts, emotions, actions, and goals into a single focused current. When you're aligned, everything you do flows in one direction. You stop wasting energy on distractions. You stop reacting to every small fluctuation in your environment. You move with intention. The person who's aligned may appear slower to others, but every step they take counts. Their progress compounds because their movement is synchronized with clarity. The fast one burns out chasing everything. The aligned one endures by pursuing only what matters. In trading, business, or any craft, speed can be seductive. When you start seeing small wins, it's easy to believe that moving faster will multiply the outcome. But speed often magnifies errors. You make decisions from excitement, not from understanding. You react instead of responding. You trade for motion, not for meaning. The aligned individual, however, understands the rhythm of growth. They don't rush the process, they refine it. They know that consistency built on alignment creates far greater results than bursts of energy built on impatience. Success is not about how fast you arrive. It's about how ready you are when you do. Many people achieve quick wins only to lose everything because their foundation wasn't aligned with long-term vision. They were chasing outcomes without building the internal structure to hold them. That's why alignment always comes before acceleration. It's the calibration that ensures your speed serves your goal, not sabotages it. Without alignment, ambition turns reckless. With alignment, ambition becomes precision. There's a difference between motion and momentum. Motion is activity for its own sake. Momentum is activity with direction. When you're aligned, your movement gains power because it's concentrated. You stop scattering your focus across multiple unfinished pursuits. You stop needing to feel productive all the time because you understand that real progress often happens in silence, in reflection, study, and patience. Alignment demands that you slow down enough to understand yourself. It's not about doing more, it's about doing what's right for the vision you're building. Think about an archer. The strength of their shot doesn't come from how fast they release the arrow, but from how precisely they align it before letting go. The pause before the release is where mastery lies. That's the difference between rushing towards success and aligning with it. You can't hit a target you haven't clearly aimed at. Speed without aim is waste. But alignment, even with slow movement, ensures that every effort lands closer to the mark. In life and work, alignment means understanding the deeper why behind your actions. Why are you pursuing this goal? Why does it matter? What's the long-term vision guiding your decisions? When those answers are unclear, speed becomes dangerous. You start reacting to comparison, competition, and external pressure. You chase validation instead of progress. But when you're aligned with purpose, you move differently. You don't rush to prove, you work to improve. You don't chase trends, you follow principles. The aligned individual lives in rhythm with discipline. They know that real success requires both inner and outer harmony. If your mindset, habits, and environment aren't aligned with your goals, you'll constantly fight resistance. It's like trying to sail against the wind, exhausting and inefficient. But when alignment is achieved, effort feels natural. The work flows because you're no longer divided within yourself. You're not forcing progress. You're allowing it through disciplined harmony. Speed creates pressure, alignment creates power. The impatient seek shortcuts. They look for the fastest way to win, the easiest way to get noticed. But what they don't realize is that the longer path, the aligned path, always leads to deeper mastery. Every shortcut skips the struggle that builds strength. Every rush overlooks the lesson hidden in repetition. Success that arrives too quickly often leaves just as fast because it lacks the structure to sustain itself. When you're aligned, you stop measuring success by how quickly results appear. You start measuring it by how consistent your effort remains. You stop being addicted to progress reports and start focusing on personal calibration, making sure your thoughts and actions reflect the outcome you seek. Alignment means your energy, attention, and intention all move in the same direction. Without that, you're working hard but scattering your impact. With alignment, even small efforts carry exponential effect because they're concentrated. The illusion of speed comes from external measurement. Society glorifies visible milestones, promotions, profits, applause, but rarely values the invisible alignment that makes them possible. Behind every overnight success are years of invisible discipline, course correction, and inner work. Alignment isn't flashy. It's quiet, deliberate, and often uncomfortable. It forces you to confront the gap between what you say you want and what you actually practice daily. But once that gap closes, your actions become congruent with your vision and progress becomes inevitable. The most powerful people in any field are rarely the fastest starters. They're the ones who stayed in alignment the longest. They didn't let temporary setbacks distort their direction. They didn't chase every opportunity that appeared. They filtered everything through their core values and long plan. They knew that true speed is not about acceleration. It's about efficiency, removing unnecessary friction by staying true to purpose. Speed appeals to ego. Alignment appeals to wisdom. Ego says, move now, prove now. Wisdom says, move right, prove later. Ego craves recognition. Alignment seeks mastery. The fast mover wants to be seen succeeding. The aligned mover wants to actually succeed. There's a difference between performing progress and building it. Alignment keeps you grounded in the latter. It allows you to move through chaos without losing direction because your compass isn't external, it's internal. When you're aligned, failure doesn't break you because it becomes feedback. You understand that mistakes are part of refinement, not signs of misfortune. You don't panic when things slow down because you trust the pace that's meant for you. You're not competing with others, you're calibrating yourself. That mindset turns pressure into focus. It removes the need for comparison because you realize that alignment is personal. It's about matching your path to your potential, not matching someone else's progress. Alignment brings clarity. It simplifies decision making. You no longer waste time debating whether to act because you've already defined what aligns with your vision. Every yes becomes intentional. Every now becomes protection. This clarity frees you from the emotional volatility that comes with chasing fast results. You no longer depend on motivation, you rely on alignment. And that's far stronger because motivation fluctuates while alignment sustains. Success rewards alignment because alignment creates stability under pressure. When external circumstances shift, aligned people adapt without losing themselves. They're flexible in method but firm in purpose. That's why they last longer, perform better, and rise higher. They don't chase the wave. They move with the current of their design. They don't rush to arrive. They stay ready until the timing aligns. Success naturally gravitates to them because they've built the structure to hold it when it comes. Growth happens in unseen, disciplined moments. The visible moments of success, the applause, the breakthrough, the recognition, are only the surface. What truly builds them is what happens behind closed doors in silence when no one is watching. The world sees the result, but it rarely sees the repetition, the correction, the quiet endurance that made it possible. Growth is not loud and it is never instant. It is slow, structured, and often invisible. It happens in those small, consistent acts of discipline that seem insignificant in the moment but compound into transformation over time. The greatest trap for most people is believing that progress only counts when it's visible. They look for proof, for validation, for signs that their effort is working. But growth rarely announces itself. It hides in the daily grind, in the quiet decisions that no one celebrates. The person who practices a skill for hours when they could be distracted, the one who studies after failure, the one who stays committed despite boredom. Those are the people who grow while others wait for motivation. Growth is subtle, and it belongs to the disciplined. Discipline is what turns intention into progress. Anyone can dream of success, but the disciplined are the ones who convert that dream into reality. They don't depend on excitement to drive them. They depend on structure. They know that motivation fades, but commitment doesn't have to. They've learned to work without reward, to improve without recognition, to persist without applause. That's where real growth happens. In the unseen repetitions that shape your character, refine your skill, and strengthen your mind. When people talk about success, they often describe the outcome, the finished product, the visible victory. But the truth is, growth is built in the hours of doubt, in the moments when quitting feels justified, but you keep going anyway. Those invisible moments are the ones that define you. The effort no one witnesses is the effort that transforms you. The disciplined know that every small act compounds. One more repetition, one more hour, one more correction. It all stacks quietly in the background until the world suddenly calls it talent. But it was never talent. It was invisible work performed with visible commitment. Growth is rarely comfortable. It requires friction. It demands that you stretch beyond what's easy, and it constantly tests your patience. Discipline is the bridge that allows you to cross that discomfort without breaking. When you show up day after day, even when you don't feel like it, you're conditioning yourself to move past resistance. That's how strength is built, not through occasional bursts of inspiration, but through steady, deliberate engagement with difficulty. The stronger you become internally, the more natural growth feels even in adversity. The unseen moments are also the most honest ones. There's no audience, no external accountability, no praise. It's just you and your standard. Discipline in private builds authenticity in public. You can't fake consistency when no one's watching. You can only do the work or avoid it. Every time you choose to stay disciplined when no one's observing, you're building integrity. The kind of self-trust that can't be taught. That trust becomes your foundation when challenges appear because you know you've already proven to yourself that you can keep going in silence. Growth hides inside repetition. Repetition builds mastery, but most people quit before mastery forms because repetition feels monotonous. The early stages of progress feel like failure. You do the same thing over and over, and nothing seems to change. But in reality, each repetition refines a small detail, a movement, a thought pattern, a reaction, and over time, those micro improvements multiply. The disciplined person doesn't need visible progress to continue. They trust the process. They understand that progress is always happening beneath the surface, even when it can't be measured yet. This principle applies everywhere, in markets, in business, and personal growth. A trader who sticks to their plan through losing streaks, a writer who keeps producing when the ideas feel stale, a leader who maintains consistency during uncertainty. They all share one thing: discipline that outlasts doubt. Growth isn't linear, it's layered. Some days feel like setbacks, others like breakthroughs. But both are essential because the struggle teaches resilience and the progress reinforces belief. Both belong to the same process. Discipline also gives structure to patience. Without discipline, patience turns into passive waiting. But disciplined patience transforms time into training. Every hour becomes an investment rather than an obstacle. You start to use time intentionally, not waiting for opportunity, but preparing for it. That's where unseen growth happens, in the quiet hours when you choose effort over comfort. Time itself becomes your ally when you fill it with disciplined action. What most people call overnight success is simply the moment when private discipline becomes publicly visible. The long nights of practice, the failed experiments, the quiet self-corrections, all of it suddenly becomes visible at once, giving the illusion of a breakthrough. But breakthroughs are never instant, they're the accumulation of invisible persistence. Every master was once a beginner who refused to quit when progress was invisible. Every success story is built from invisible chapters of consistency. Growth demands humility. You have to be willing to do the work that no one sees and to accept that no one owes you recognition for it. The disciplined person doesn't work for praise, they work for progress. They understand that applause is temporary but skill is permanent. They know that the only true reward for discipline is mastery. The quiet confidence that comes from knowing you've earned your competence. That's why the unseen moments are sacred. They shape you without ego, without distraction, without comparison. In every field, the difference between the ordinary and the exceptional lies in what happens off the stage. It's not the performance that defines excellence, it's the preparation. The hours spent practicing after everyone else has stopped. The focus maintained when distractions call louder. The corrections made when no one's keeping score. Those moments determine how far you go, because growth doesn't respond to intention. It responds to consistency. You can't control outcomes, but you can control discipline, and discipline guarantees movement even when results delay. Growth in unseen moments also builds emotional endurance. It teaches you to work through boredom, frustration, and self-doubt. Those emotions are inevitable, but discipline turns them into fuel. Instead of reacting to temporary feelings, you act according to permanent principles. You start trusting effort more than emotion. That shift is what separates progress from paralysis. The more disciplined you become, the less power your moods have over your mission. Even in environments of competition, it's not the most talented who lasts, it's the most disciplined. Talent gives you potential, but discipline turns potential into performance. The disciplined worker, the consistent trader, the focused creator, they grow steadily even when no one notices. They aren't chasing applause because they know that results come naturally when discipline becomes habit. Every quiet hour of effort adds another layer of strength, confidence, and precision. Growth happens in silence because silence demands presence. When you're alone with your work, you can't hide behind excuses. You either show up or you don't. That clarity refines not just skill but identity. The disciplined begin to see themselves differently, not as people who try but as people who do. That identity shift is the foundation of unstoppable growth. Once you see yourself as consistent, you start acting like it naturally. Every unseen moment reinforces that belief, making discipline not just an act but a way of being. True growth never shouts, it whispers. It's found in the calm repetition of practice, the quiet correction after failure. The steady rhythm of showing up again and again. It doesn't need recognition and it doesn't demand attention. It simply builds patiently, persistently, and visibly. Until one day the results make noise loud enough for everyone to hear what discipline had been creating all along. Trust the process, not the timing. That's one of the hardest principles to live by, especially in a world that celebrates speed, rewards immediacy, and punishes delay. Everyone wants results and they want them now. But success doesn't operate on your schedule. Growth unfolds according to its own rhythm, and that rhythm can't be forced or rushed. The ones who thrive are those who learn to surrender their obsession with theory when things will happen and instead devote themselves completely to how they make them happen. The process is what shapes you, what refines you, and what prepares you. The timing is just the moment when that preparation meets opportunity. Most people never understand that the process is the real prize. They look at the delay as punishment, as a sign that they're not good enough or that their goals are too far away. But delay doesn't mean denial. It's often protection. The process is building something in you before it delivers something to you. When you trust the process, you stop fighting against the flow of time and start using it. You begin to realize that everything has a season and every season has a purpose. There's a reason why success takes time. Without that stretch of patience, you'd never develop the discipline to maintain it once it arrives. The process teaches what results can't. When you're working, learning, failing, adjusting, you're gaining strength and wisdom that shortcuts will never give you. The waiting tests your conviction. It exposes whether your commitment is based on excitement or belief. Anyone can be consistent when progress is visible, but trusting the process means staying consistent when everything seems still. That's when growth is doing its quiet work behind the scenes. You can't always see it, but you can feel it in the lessons, the resilience, and the deeper sense of purpose being built. Timing is seductive because it gives you the illusion of control. You start thinking, be this time, I should have made it, or it's taking too long. But success doesn't care about your schedule, it cares about your readiness. The process isn't just building the result, it's building you into someone capable of sustaining it. If you received everything you wanted right now, you might not have the character, patience, or understanding to handle it. That's why timing often feels cruel, because it denies you what you're not yet prepared to keep. The process, on the other hand, ensures that by the time you get there, you're strong enough to stay there. Every great achiever understands this paradox. They've faced seasons where nothing seemed to move, where effort felt wasted, and where progress was invisible. Yet they kept working because they trusted that the process was doing its job. The struggle you go through isn't random. It's refining your judgment, sharpening your focus, and conditioning your mind. That's what alignment with the process looks like, showing up even when the timing doesn't cooperate. Trusting the process doesn't mean ignoring reality. It means accepting it. It's acknowledging that you can't control outcomes, but you can control effort. You can't dictate when doors will open, but you can prepare yourself to walk through them the moment they do. You can't predict timing, but you can predict that consistent discipline will always lead to opportunities. The process gives you that power. The power to stay ready instead of waiting desperately for luck or perfect timing. The impatient mind wants guarantees. It wants to know when the reward will come. But the process never promises dates. It only promises results for those who persist. Every repetition, every hour spent refining your craft, every small decision made in alignment with your goals, they're all invisible deposits into your future success. You won't always see the balance grow daily, but one day the account overflows. Timing is simply the moment that cumulative effort becomes visible. Impatience is rooted in insecurity. When you don't trust the process, you begin to doubt your capability, your path, or even your purpose. You start comparing your timeline to others, thinking that progress is linear and that everyone should arrive at the same pace. But growth isn't a race, it's a sequence of lessons uniquely designed for you. The process is personal. It unfolds according to what you need to learn, not according to what you wish to have. Timing is external, but the process is internal. The more you focus inward, the less pressure you feel about the calendar. There's a quiet freedom in surrendering to the process. It doesn't mean giving up control. It means shifting focus from outcome to execution. You start valuing each day not by what it gives you, but by how you use it. You stop chasing milestones and start mastering moments. That shift transforms how you experience success because you realize that progress isn't something you wait for. It's something you build piece by piece through disciplined action. When you trust the process, you learn patience without passivity. You keep working, learning, refining. You stay active but calm, persistent but composed. That mindset separates the discipline from the desperate. The desperate chase outcomes, the disciplined build foundations. They don't rush the process because they know the process is the guarantee. The timing may fluctuate, but the law of effort never fails. When you give consistent, intentional effort, something always grows. Sometimes slowly, sometimes suddenly, but always surely. The process also protects you from arrogance. If results came instantly, you might mistake luck for skill. But when you've earned success through slow, deliberate growth, you understand its weight. You value it differently because you've seen what it takes, you've failed, adjusted, and endured long enough to respect the structure behind success. That's what makes real achievement sustainable. Not speed, but understanding. Timing often feels unfair because you see others reaching milestones faster. But comparison only distracts you from your own lane. Everyone's process is different because everyone's preparation is different. The soil, the seed, the season, they all vary. What's growing for someone else may not be meant for you yet. When you trust your process, you stop questioning why it's taking longer. You start appreciating that every delay carries a lesson, every pause refines your perspective, and every setback strengthens your execution. There are moments when you'll want to give up, when effort feels wasted, and when silence feels endless. That's when trust becomes the strongest currency. You have to believe that something is happening beneath the surface, even when it's invisible. Just because progress isn't loud doesn't mean it's absent. The process rarely shows you immediate evidence because it's too busy shaping you internally. Growth isn't always about gaining more. Sometimes it's about becoming more focused, more patient, more disciplined, more ready. In trading, in business, in life, the process always comes before the payoff. You can't skip the learning curve, the repetition, the failure. Each cycle you complete teaches you how to navigate the next one better. Timing will always test you, but the process will always train you. The more you trust it, the less you panic during waiting periods. You start to see the waiting not as wasted time, but as the training ground for maturity. Every quiet period has a purpose. Every delay has data hidden inside it. Every pause is preparation disguised as stillness. Trusting the process transforms pressure into patience. It allows you to see time not as an enemy, but as a partner. You realize that life isn't trying to withhold success from you, it's preparing you to hold it properly. When you focus on the process, you build habits that last. You learn that growth doesn't happen when you demand results, but when you commit to progress regardless of results. Timing will eventually catch up to your preparation. It always does, but only if you're still standing when it arrives. Work silently while results mature. The most powerful progress often happens in silence, away from attention, away from applause, away from noise. The loudest workers are rarely the most effective because energy spent on performance is energy stolen from execution. True discipline thrives in quiet spaces, those unseen hours where consistency builds momentum brick by brick. When you work silently, you remove the pressure of proving and focus instead on improving. You stop trying to convince the world that you're progressing and instead let your results do the talking when the time is right. Working silently doesn't mean working secretly, it means working intentionally. It's about channeling your energy inward rather than scattering it outward. The modern world glorifies visibility, posting every step, announcing every plan, chasing validation before completion. But real achievement matures privately in the background of daily effort. The process doesn't need an audience to be effective. The seed doesn't shout while it grows underground. It waits patiently until it's strong enough to emerge. The same applies to success. It's cultivated in silence and revealed in strength. When you work silently, you train yourself to value growth over recognition. You stop measuring your worth by how many people notice and start measuring it by how much you evolve. That shift is crucial because public attention can easily distort focus. The moment you start performing for validation, your effort becomes reactive rather than purposeful. Silence protects you from distraction. It keeps your intentions clean. You're no longer driven by the need to prove, but by the desire to master. There's power in being underestimated. When no one sees your progress, you're free from expectation. You can make mistakes without judgment, experiment without fear, and rebuild without interruption. Working silently gives you space to refine. Every failure becomes a private lesson rather than a public embarrassment. You can fall, rise, and recalibrate without pressure. That's where growth accelerates, in the calm consistency of effort unseen by others. Silence is not absence, it's incubation. It's the environment where raw potential transforms into polished skill. Discipline thrives in silence because silence demands self-accountability. When no one's watching, you either act from commitment or you don't act at all. There's no audience to impress, no applause to sustain you, only your standard. Working silently exposes your true level of dedication. It's easy to look disciplined when others are watching, but real mastery is built when you hold yourself accountable in private. That's where integrity forms, not through public declarations, but through private execution. Results take time to mature. Every meaningful achievement has a gestation period, and rushing it only weakens its foundation. When you plant a seed, you don't dig it up daily to check if it's growing. You trust the process and let time do its work. The same principle applies to personal and professional growth. Working silently teaches you to respect that timeline. It shifts your focus from instant validation to eventual realization. You learn to measure success by effort, not applause. You stop obsessing over timing because you know maturity takes patience. The silence between action and result can feel uncomfortable. It's a space filled with uncertainty, self-doubt, and temptation to prove yourself prematurely. That's exactly why silence is powerful. It forces you to build resilience. You learn to stay centered even when recognition doesn't come. You begin to understand that external approval is temporary, but internal confidence is permanent. Every silent effort builds that confidence layer by layer until your belief in your process outweighs your need for praise. Working silently also protects your energy. Constantly sharing your goals drains focus because it gives you the illusion of progress. Talking about your plans triggers a premature sense of accomplishment, making you feel satisfied before you've actually done the work. Silence prevents that leak. It keeps your energy contained, allowing it to build pressure like steam in a sealed chamber. When that pressure finally releases through results, it's powerful, undeniable, and unstoppable. There's also strategic strength in silence. When you move quietly, you avoid unnecessary resistance. Not everyone needs to understand your process, and not everyone will support it. Working loudly invites opinions, doubts, and distractions that can cloud your direction. But when you operate silently, you protect your vision from interference. You stay focused on the mission, not the noise surrounding it. The fewer people involved in your process, the clearer your path becomes. In trading, business, or personal mastery, the principle is the same. The most consistent performers aren't the ones broadcasting their moves. They're the ones refining their craft in private. The trader who studies charts at midnight, the artist who sketches through rejection, the entrepreneur who builds quietly for years before anyone notices. They all share one trait: they let their results mature before they reveal them. That maturity gives their success weight and permanence. Silence also deepens awareness. Without external noise, you can hear your intuition more clearly. You start noticing patterns, insights, and lessons that others miss because they're too distracted. Silence sharpens focus. It allows you to think longer, act smarter, and adjust faster. The quiet worker becomes strategic, not reactive. They don't rush decisions or chase trends because they've learned to trust their rhythm. They understand that noise is often mistaken for progress, but silence is the birthplace of precision. When you work silently, patience becomes a natural habit. You no longer chase fast outcomes because you know the best results are the ones that last. You develop endurance, the ability to keep going when the reward is invisible. That's what separates consistent performers from impulsive ones. The impulsive quit when results delay. The disciplined continue because they understand that results are forming beneath the surface. Silence gives them strength to endure that invisible period. Working silently doesn't mean you hide forever. It means you reveal only when ready. When results mature, they speak louder than any announcement ever could. You won't need to convince anyone of your growth because evidence carries more weight than explanation. People may not see your effort, but they'll see the outcome, and that outcome will carry the quiet authority of something earned, not advertised. The world rewards noise in the short term, but respects silence in the long run. The loud get attention, but the silent get legacy. Those who focus on performing for approval burn out quickly because their drive depends on response. But those who work quietly build something sustainable because their drive comes from within. Their motivation is internal, rooted in discipline, not dependent on applause. Silence sharpens humility. When you work without needing recognition, you stay grounded. You stop attaching your identity to outcomes and start valuing the process itself. You realize that mastery isn't about being seen. It's about being capable. You stop talking about goals and start living them. Each silent day becomes a layer of credibility, a deposit in the account of future respect. By the time success becomes visible, it carries authenticity because it's been forged in solitude, not in spectacle. There's something timeless about working quietly. It's the same principle that built craftsmen, athletes, thinkers, and leaders across generations. They all understood that what happens unseen is what sustains what becomes seen. They weren't chasing instant validation because they were too busy building permanence. Silence was their shield, discipline their weapon, patience their advantage. To work silently while results mature is to trust that the process doesn't doesn't need proof every day. It's to believe that growth doesn't need to be broadcast to be real. It's to understand that noise attracts attention, but silence attracts mastery. The silent worker isn't hiding, they're preparing. They're building something stable enough to speak for itself when the time is right. And when that time comes, the results will not whisper. They will roar with the power of quiet work finally revealed.